maybe now would be a good time to shift to endurance. And of the 4 types of endurance, and maybe you could remind us what those are, what do you think are the 2 that most people are seeking or pursuing in terms of health and aesthetics, right? I mean, I realize that we probably have athletes out there as well, but I think when I think health and aesthetics, I think, okay, the ability to do sustained endurance, 30 plus minutes of some ongoing activity. How does one maximize that work? What are the modifiable variables? And then maybe you could tell us what the other major category is that people ought to have in their kit.
Okay, so starting off with exercise choice. One thing, as soon as we cross into the endurance world, and this is true for all 4 of those categories, exercise choice needs to be very concerned with eccentric landing. Right, so you don't need to avoid it, but you need to recognize it relative or compare it against those other strength and speed ones. The volume is low on those ones, so if you have some eccentric absorption, it's okay. But as we sort of talked about 5 minutes ago, more eccentric means greater chance of muscle damage, soreness. So if you take something and magnify it across 30 minutes or even 5 minutes, but of maximal exertion, you have a recipe for blowing up. You can imagine, I haven't run in forever, and I've listened to this Huberman Lab podcast, and I'm going to get into my zone 2 training, whatever. And I start jogging. I'm going to do, I remember when I used to be able to do 25, and you just do a 25-minute jog. The amount of eccentric landing that just occurred on every single step, because you're never, with running, even slow running, you never have 2 feet on the ground at the same time. So it is a 1 foot land, your entire body mass plus gravity onto one leg at a time, repeated now hundreds of times. That eccentric landing is going to cause tremendous soreness. Your quads are going to go. You're probably going to get shin splints, which is what those are entirely caused by eccentric landing, and when the tissue is not ready to tolerate that. If you're not landing correctly, this is when knee pain happens, back pain, shoulder, neck pain, because of movement compensation. So anytime we start pressing to fatigue, let's be very concerned with there. So my initial recommendation is start with activities, exercise choice-wise, that are mostly concentric based. So think about a cycle. So when you're riding on a bike, you're pushing the pedal, but you're never landing and absorbing it. So you could go out and do a 45-minute bike ride, and you're not going to get that sore because there's not a lot of eccentric load. Swimming, similar thing here, right? There's some eccentrics when your hand hits the water, but fairly minimal. It's mostly a push, no load. Rowing, similar thing, mostly concentric. Pushing a sled is fantastic. Going uphill, running or even walking hard uphill, all good because they're very minimal landing relative to like running downhill, which would be a very, very bad idea to start. So if you're first jumping into these things, progress your volume for endurance very slowly if it involves eccentric landing. A really bad strategy would be to jump in and do, say, a circuit training class that involves a bunch of box jumps, right? This is not a good way to do your first foray into conditioning. You're going to get incredibly sore because you're jumping into landing. You're now looking at 3 to 10x body weight in terms of absorption with a single land, even if you're just jumping. So be careful of that in any of those endurance areas of exercise choice. So what to pick? Pick the one that you are most technically proficient in because you're going to do it a lot. It's going to be a lot of repetitions. Whatever one you feel the most joy in. If that's rowing, great. If that's pushing a sled, it doesn't really matter. You can do this actually with weights. This is our preferred way, by the way, with our athletes. So we might do a 30-minute circuit where we do a 5-minute farmer's carry with a pretty light weight. So you're just going to carry some weights in your hand and you're just going to walk up and down the street for 5 minutes. You're going to set that down and then you're going to do, say, a 3-minute plank. And then you're going to pick that up and you're going to do body weight squats, like slowly and just tempoed. And you're going to do a handful of different exercises so the athletes don't get super bored. Or a very simple one, if a 30-minute workout, 10 minutes on a treadmill, 10 minutes on a bike, 10 minutes on a rower. But for those of you that are like, oh my God, I can't do 30 straight minutes of running, cool, break it up into 3 or 4 different exercises that are all fairly safe. So that's how I would do that long duration piece.